Hey, what's up? Pizza Loving Nerd here. Thanks to Michelle Vertino for being my first Patreon supporter. I really appreciate the support, and he is actually the highest tier also. Subscribe to me on Patreon for Patreon exclusive blog posts like this one. And yeah. Anyways, let's get into the video. So today we are looking at Ubuntu Cinnamon. Now, one thing I'm just going to get out of the way is the first thing I noticed is that this actually uses the Calamaris installer instead of the Ubiquity installer. Now, Ubuntu, I have heard that they're planning on switching the Calamaris, so this might be just a way to future-proof for them, but it still is pretty interesting because we have a early look, kind of, on how Ubuntu will be installing itself in the future. Now, let's start with the look. Now, I don't really like this default wallpaper, mainly because the taskbar kind of cuts it off a little bit. I feel like if this logo is a little bit smaller and then in the center, and same with this logo, this would look way better, this wallpaper. Luckily, there are a ton of other wallpapers you can choose from. Now, let's get into theming. Now, I'm a little bit conflicting of what I think of the theme. I really like the way applications without client-side decorations look. Like this is Nemo, for example. This looks great. I really like how they basically took the Linux Mint, I think Mint Y theme, or I guess Arc. I think it's Mint Y, and then they added an Ubuntu twist to it. It's got the Ubuntu orange, but it's also got the awesome look of Linux Mint Mint Y. So I really like how this is themed. What I don't like, however, is if I open an application with CSDs, such as, I guess, 2048, the window is actually semi-transparent. You can't see it very well here, but if I open something else, if you look closely, the window is semi-transparent right here. I'll zoom into it so you can see it better. Here's another example. So the window is transparent, but then the inside of the window is not transparent. So the window is transparent, but then the window border, but then the inside of the window is not transparent. So I don't really like how that looks, to be honest. Kind of looks bad, because the reason I like GDK is because how well it integrates with the look, where CSDs kind of, you don't even realize that there's a window border. It kind of just feels like part of the program. Having a window the same color under it, it just doesn't feel right to me. Now, one thing is, this is a pretty good alternative to Linux Mint if you want a non-LTS release. But I still like Linux Mint better because of Timeshift, which is pre-installed, and its Software Center. Now, by default, this version of Ubuntu Cinnamon, uses its own, it uses the GNOME Software Center, which is the same Ubuntu uses. My issue with the GNOME Software Center is in its recommendations category area, it shows snaps and system applications. Because of this, you have to check to see if it's a snap before you install by scrolling down and checking the source. This is really annoying. However, the Linux Mint Software Center just puts FlatHub in its name in parentheses. Now, if the Ubuntu Software Center did that, that would be a good idea. But since it's already using the Cinnamon desktop, I feel like it should use the Linux Mint Software Center. I get why they aren't, because this is an Ubuntu distro and they want it to feel like it's made by Canonical, and Canonical wouldn't do that. However, I still think it should be like what I just said. Now, the other feature it's missing is Timeshift. Linux Mint has a feature called Timeshift for backing up and stuff like that. That is missing from this distro, and I feel like it should be a part of this distro. Now, Linux Mint also has its own welcome screen. Now, I guess they could fork Linux Mint welcome screen and just make it more Ubuntu Budgie-like, or Ubuntu Cinnamon-like. But I think what they should do is do what Ubuntu Budgie did, and fork the Ubuntu Mate welcome screen and just personalize that. That would feel like it would integrate better with this sort of desktop setup where it has canonical themed things. Overall, I feel like I am kind of used to Linux Mint whenever I open a Ubuntu distro that uses Cinnamon desktop, and because of that, my brain automatically thinks of Linux Mint features that are missing on here. So I feel like if they add a time shift, and if the Ubuntu Software Center got improved, like if they got rid of snaps from the Ubuntu Software Center and had a separate snap store, I think that's what Ubuntu's future plan is. If they did that, I wouldn't have any gripes with the GNOME Software Center. But it's missing Linux Mint's awesome Software Center. It's missing time shift. I just feel like it's missing Linux Mint's welcome screen that lets you choose between a traditional layout and a Windows 7 layout. I feel like if they added all of the features that Linux Mint has, this would be one of the perfect distros for me, because I love Linux Mint's user interface and its design choices. But I don't like how it's based on the LTS Ubuntu. LTS Ubuntu still has GAMP 2.8 for me, and 2.10 is obviously out. So, because of that, I feel like this should, since this is based on Ubuntu 19.10, for those who don't want to use an LTS build of Ubuntu, this is a pretty suitable replacement for Linux Mint. So, if it added some of these features that Linux Mint had, I feel like this would be the perfect Linux Mint replacement. Now, again, I don't really feel like it's a fair comparison because Linux Mint invented Cinnamon, and I'm not comparing Linux Mint Mate with Ubuntu Mate, am I? But this, other than it being non-LTS, for any other reason, I would still use Linux Mint. This will get there eventually. I feel like next release, I feel like the 2004 release of this might be really good. Because now that this has all of the community exposure it needed, and everyone knows about it now. But I feel like because of that, it's going to get better in the future. But right now, it's going to have to compete with Linux Mint. I don't think it should compete with Linux Mint, but because Linux Mint invented Cinnamon and it's Ubuntu based, I think this distro, people are going to have to decide between this distro and regular Linux Mint. And Linux Mint has so many features that this won't be able to compete because of all the missing features that Linux Mint has that this doesn't have. So, because of that, I hope this distro does well, but I'm kind of worried about this distro because of that thing I just said, where it might have to compete with Linux Mint, and that would be a problem. So, yeah. Anyways, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.